Good afternoon and welcome to the Joy Show. Joy is an acronym for just one you. And here is the place that we celebrate everything unique and remarkable about our special guests. So let us begin with our land acknowledgement. We're standing on the land now known as Toronto, and we stand with reverence, committed to the sharing of this land. We acknowledge the genocide committed here, and we choose to courageously move along a new path, creating reconciliation. This land was stolen from the Anishinaabe. European settlers also stole their culture, their language, their spirituality, and their children. And today, Toronto is covered under Treaty Number 13 and the Williams Treaties. It is the traditional territory of many First People, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. And is still today, the First People are struggling to be seen and heard. Colonization has created a system of destruction to our First People and to the people forcibly brought here through the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. Toronto was built on stolen land with stolen labor of Black, Indigenous, and racialized people. In our desire for reconciliation, we honor the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Treaty and agree to peaceably share and care for this land and her people. We are committed to the active dismantling of the colonial system. We are committed to the dismantling of all forms of racism. Please take a moment to acknowledge your personal commitment to the land you are on and the path you choose to walk going forward. Miigwech, thank you. Well, my guest today is a remarkable woman. Dr. Laura Quirk is currently a full-time professor at Conestoga College. She's been teaching at the university level since 1996. She has an undergraduate degree in archaeology, a master's in anthropology, a master's in history, and a PhD in history with a minor in archaeology. Before she was a professor, she was on a disability pension for 17 years due to multiple sclerosis. And it was during that time that she managed to get her degrees. And before that, in her first career, she owned an art gallery. Wow. Welcome, Dr. Laura. You have,
Thank
you
you.
have a resume.
I don't know. It's just my life. I don't know what to say, but thank you. Thank you very much for having
It's
me.
good. Oh, so glad that you're here. Now, you did your education while you were sick.
Yes, I did.
Talk a
Yeah,
little bit about that, because that's a big undertaking for a well person.
it was, okay. So I my first career owned an art gallery, and I was unable because of multiple sclerosis to continue. I lost my vision. My left hand was curled up. I kept cutting my hand on glass. When you're picture framing, you can't bleed on people's art. I couldn't stand. I wasn't walking well. And long story short, I had a neurologist. I was in a hospital, and he said, "Look, you've just got to give it up. You can't work anymore, and you must be on a disability pension." And he also said, "No one will hire you." And I thought, wow. And I remember thinking, yeah, I don't think so. They will hire me if they know my work. But I
Yes.
thought first, I thought, okay, I'm going to let you put me on a disability pension, and I'm going to get the degrees that I need to teach at the university level, because the only thing that had not let me down so far was my brain. It could
Yeah.
from MS, but it hadn't. And so, I mean, I'd been blind, about fully in this eye, in both eyes twice. I'd lost my speech. I couldn't walk. My hand was curled up. I couldn't pee. I have asthma from MS, and anything from the top of my head to the bottom of my toes. But my brain hadn't failed me. And so I remember thinking to myself, you know what? I'm going to get the degrees I need to be able to teach. I knew that meant getting a PhD, because I thought I can't just get an undergrad or even a master's, because I need to be indispensable to somebody.
Yeah.
And so I thought, fine, I will let you send me back to school and do that. Now, a PhD is supposed to take 4 years. It took me 6.5, give or take. And that's actually average in Canada is 7 years, because we don't have any funding. You don't have enough funding to keep going, so you have to work. And so And my undergrad took me 5 years. I'm the first and only person, as far as I know, to do a double major in prehistoric and historic archaeology. And that took me 5 years. I wanted to have both under my belt. And
Yeah.
then my first master's, I thought, well, okay, I'll do archaeology slash anthropology. And I did that at Western. And then I thought, ooh, as much as I love archaeology, I better switch to history because there's more chance of a job. So I switched to history and did another master's in history. And then, well, I still loved archaeology, so I did my PhD in archaeology. Plus, I did or in history with a minor in archaeology and a minor in gender studies. So I wanted sort of to be as much opportunity as possible. But yeah, for me, it took me like I was blind at one point during my undergrad. I remember I had to write an exam, and I called my professor and said, "Look, I can't see it. Can you read me the questions? What are we going to do?" And he said, "Well, you have to do this exam. There's no option. We have to do the exam. So we have to do something." And I thought, "Oh my God, what am I going to do?" So I had a friend record my notes, and I listened to them. And I thought, "Oh, I'm going to fail. I'm going to fail. I'm going to fail." And what was so interesting was every question that the professor had, click, I heard the tape go off in my head, and I knew the answers. And I realized I'm one of those persons that hears a song maybe once or twice and I know the lyrics. I should have realized that that would work for me, but I
Yeah.
didn't think that I went into the exam going, I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail. I think I got 98 or some such thing on the exam. It was unreal how well I did. So after that, actually I used that as a tool, and whenever I had an exam, I did exactly that every time. And so I turned out to be a really smart tool for me. But anyway, in the end, yes, it took me longer than most people. Oh, and the other thing I did was I decided that I wanted to build a house. And so I bought a piece of property and I drew a house on a piece of graph paper. And I ended up being the general contractor to make it happen. So I took a semester off to do that. So, but it was only a semester, and the house was built and it was beautiful. And it was my dream house, and it was wonderful. And it was, of course, accessible with ramps and everything else.
Yeah.
And but at the same time, I just wanted to do this. I've always wanted my PhD. I don't remember not wanting it. And so it was always the end goal for me. So long story short, yes, that was my fun. And I remember, oh my gosh, I was doing my PhD and I got asked to do a survey. And the questions were like, is this the most stressful thing you've ever done in your life? I'm like, nope, nope. And it
Nope.
turns out my answers were so unusual that the people who wrote this survey or whatever they did asked if they could interview me because they couldn't understand how this wasn't the most stressful thing I'd ever done. I was like, well, as a matter of fact, I've nearly died a few times. This is nothing. This is what I want to do. This is my joy. And anyway, but I realized I was an outlier, Barbara, not the norm there. So anyway,
But
I mean, I don't know what else you want to
I
talk about,
love
but that's
that.
just my journey.
Yeah, I think that's really remarkable because I think most of us, when we have a physical challenge or whatever, we allow that to consume everything.
Mm.
And rather than going, how can I make this work? Like recording your notes so that you could hear because you couldn't see. Like that's brilliant.
Well, it was. I don't know what made me think of it, but it worked really well. Yeah.
Of course, of course. That's what I love is the ingenuity that comes when we're faced with something that we have to figure out a solution because, of course, like you said, your PhD was not an option. You always wanted to do that. So now it's how do I make it happen, given given what appear to be obstacles, but maybe they're opportunities for a new way of learning.
Well, and in fact, I was in the hospital when the doctor said to me, "Look, we didn't think they didn't think I was going to make it, and B, you're never going to work again." So when I got out and I did survive, obviously, what was interesting was I immediately applied to the government to test me, to do these things, to see if they would send me back to university and help pay for it, because I knew on a disability pension I wasn't going to be able to pay for it. And
Yeah.
so I scored high enough on things that they said, yeah, yeah, we'll help you go back to university. And so that's exactly what happened. And so it was just lucky and also not lucky.
Smart.
Like I don't know the word. I'm not really happy with word lucky, but I don't know what else to call it.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I don't know what
Well,
else. Fortunate. I'm certainly grateful.
Well, it sounds a little bit like you really did advocate for yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Like, so often, the doctor says ABC and we go, "Okay," and we lay down and die or whatever, right? Whereas you sat back and went, "Oh, okay, ABC, but there's a whole bunch more letters, so let me just set that in the back because I got something I need to do."
You're
And
so
so
right. Yeah, Barbara, it's interesting. I would say to, like, people say to me, "Oh my God, Laura, there's a wall in front of you. How are you doing this?" Like, there's a wall? There's no door in the wall. I'll go over the wall, under the wall, around the wall. I'm gonna find a way to bash that wall. Like, I mean, there's gonna be a way. There has to be a way. And I don't know, Barbara, why I always had that mentality, but I did. And I remember thinking, fine, pay me to go back to school. Fine, I'll take it. Because I knew ultimately I was not going to stay on a disability. And I mean, I had to fight to stay on disability early. But what was ironically weird, if that's the way to put it, is when I got hired at Conestoga and I had this full-time job, I had a private disability and I was also on CPP disability. And I had
yeah.
to contact them both and say, I need to get off this because I'm working full time. And both of them were like, oh, no, 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 you've got MS. No, and so both of them said they were going to pay me for 6 months just in case. And I was like, oh, will I have to pay it back? If not, okay, you go ahead. But anyway, I thought like I was kind of cheating or something because I didn't, it was weird. Like it was almost hard to get off disability. And the woman who in my private disability, she said, I'm going to leave you on the books for 5 years. And if you need disability, I'm going to put you right back on, just so you know. I was like, okay, I'm not planning to need that, but thank you. So,
Well, and it's interesting, because we're not accustomed to people changing the way things are going, right? We're not accustomed to a healing happening or a shift happening where, yes, I'm capable of looking after myself. Self, I no longer require this. I think we tend to. I remember reading something years ago by uh, an author and thinker by the name of Quimby, Phineas Parkhurst Quimby, and he talked about the fact that the medical profession, um, he really felt that they were doing a huge disservice
mm,
by telling people, oh, you've got this disease, here's what's going to happen to you. And he's
mm,
like, the minute you tell your mind something, if your mind agrees with it, then automatically, because the mind builds the body, right away, there's going to be if we believe the doctor, then the doctor gets to be right. But if we sit back and go, but I'm unique and he hasn't dealt with me before, so obviously my story can be different.
So you're absolutely right. I remember a doctor saying to me one day, Laura, you're not as well as you think you are. And I remember looking at that doctor and saying, you're wrong. I'm exactly as well as I think I am, no better and no worse. And it was like, and then he says, well, actually, I have the tests to prove it. And I was like, I'm not going to argue with you, because it was like the most bizarre conversation. And also, this is the same doctor who said I wouldn't live to 40. And I thought to myself, some people won't live to 40, as you've just said, because you've told me that. I'm going to
That's
prove you wrong. And I obviously have. Well, if you know how old I am, obviously. But at the same time, I just thought, what? Why are you telling me this? Is this going to help me? Is this somehow beneficial? Like, what are you being my doctor God, and you get to tell me when I'm going to die and live? And it was a weird set of conversations, and I never did understand the value in telling me that.
good. Well, luckily for you, you didn't buy into it, because I think that's what gets a lot of people is they're so discouraged once the doctor gives them a prognosis that at that point, basically, well, I'm going to die in 6 weeks, so I guess I'm going to die in 6 weeks. And, I'm never going to work again. Well, I guess I'll just crawl into my bed and never work again. And I think, unfortunately, that's why Quimby in his work, which was in the 1800s, he said, doctors are practicing malpractice
Hmm.
by giving us these prognoses that may or may not come to pass.
Yeah. Well, and also why? Why tell us that anyhow? Like, it never did make sense to me about the why. I'm always
Um,
interested in the why, but that one never made sense to me. And but was going to say it motivated me. It did, and I was motivated already, but it certainly gave me the "yeah, I'm going to prove you wrong" moment. Like I don't know if that's what
Rebel
doctors
you.
said. So, but anyway, yeah, yeah,
But that's an important part, I think, for people to understand is that we really do create
mm,
our lives. And if we're thinking along the lines of this is really bad and terrible, awful, and I'm going to be confined to a wheelchair and I'm not going to be able to see, and I'm not, then all of a sudden the body sort of curls into itself and ends up creating something that matches that. But at the moment you go, wait a minute, I'm going to prove you wrong. And I've heard that from a lot of people who've had back injuries and been told you'll never walk again, and they're like, forget that, I'm going to walk. So I think we have to take whatever a doctor says with a grain of salt, going, let me decide for me what
right,
this is going to be, right?
yeah, yeah, for
Wow,
sure.
good for you. Now, do you miss the art, like the art gallery that you had? Do you miss that compared to the teaching that you're doing now?
Oh, yeah, I do miss it. I loved that. I loved having my art gallery. I loved picture framing. It was a creative outlet. I enjoyed it. I loved being around art. I found it so stimulating and wonderful. I found, interestingly though, the main part of my job was education. People would come into my gallery and say, "I don't know what I'm supposed to look at. I don't know understand what I'm looking at." And so I felt always like, "Oh, well, let's have a conversation. Let's figure out what you like." And I think it turns out what I did then that I loved, I'm still doing in a way, and differently, but still similar. And I mean, I've always been that person that every job I know is going to give me some joy that I love. Like I worked at McDonald's when I was a youngster, 16, 17. And I remember thinking, this is great training. 30-second service is what we had to strive for. And the
Wow.
customer was always right. And I thought this was good training. And then
Yeah.
when I had my gallery, I loved it. There wasn't a day I didn't go to work going, woohoo. I loved, loved, loved my job. And I thought, am I ever going to love anything as much as I love this? Well, yep, I did. I saw going to university as a career, my second career really, and I saw it that way and I approached it that way and I loved it. I loved being at school. I felt every day like this was a selfish little I want to do this. This is all about Laura Quirk. And then when I got to be a professor and they overlapped my years of doing graduate school, I started teaching at university level then and ultimately getting hired at Conestoga, which was really a great fit for me. But in that, it's like I love my job. I love my job. I've said to my boss a few times, can't really believe you pay me for this. I mean, I'm glad you do, but I love my job so much. So I kind of think it's me a little bit too
Of
that
course it is.
I just love what I do. I love life. I love, and yeah, of course I've had challenges. Of course it's been hard. I'm not trying to candy coat it and say, well, it was no big deal to do 17 years of school and to be disabled. I mean, I was in a wheelchair. I was in a scooter. I do have a cane, though I'm not using it currently. I have been blind. I mean, all those things. I couldn't speak. And I
Yeah.
couldn't speak any words that anyone understood, really. Apparently, I was 16 and 18% intelligible. So I go all these things in my head and I can't share them. And also my attacks, Barbara, lasted at minimum of 8 weeks, sometimes 6 months. So being blind or not speaking or not walking and some things can be permanent. You just never knew. And so I think all I just want to say there is it's not like I'm saying, well, it was a ride in the park. It wasn't. But I just always knew that machines could carry me. Machines can talk for me. I'd find a way to do what I wanted to do and what I love doing. And so it's absolutely the case. If I need to, there's machines that can talk for me, and there's machines that, like a scooter or something, can carry me, a wheelchair. So yeah,
I love that.
I love what I do. Yeah. So
Yeah. You have a love for life.
I
I
do.
think that's what I'm hearing from you is you love life. And as a result of that, you figure out how to do it regardless of what your body's telling you. I
You know,
love that.
Yeah, you're right. And Barb, I do want to say, I had a challenging childhood, and my mom had MS, and there was a lot of issues about that. And I remember thinking to myself, well, I can do anything for a day. I can do this today. I can get through this today. But what's relevant is, as a child, I didn't have a love of life. What I had was a determination to get through. But as
Mm,
soon as I left home and felt like I could just be myself, whatever that meant, and not be judged for who my parents were, but for who I was,
yeah.
I then started being myself and living the way I wanted to live, and that's when I really started having a love of life and feel like I mean I know the word is authenticity, or authentically I see on the screen, and there is no doubt that it's always was my goal. I knew even as a youngster I was leaving home at as soon as I could, and as soon as I finished, we had grade 13. I finished that at 17 years of age, and I left home and I never went back. And that for me was just what I needed to do to live as fully as I could. And I saved money to go to university, and I had the money in my hand, but I was like, I'm going to buy this art gallery, because when will I ever get a chance to have an art gallery again? So, I made choices along the way that opportunity knocked, and I took it to live the way I wanted to live. So yeah.
That's powerful. That I think is the one thing people should take away from this conversation today is you lived your life according to your desires and your joy, and as a result built a remarkable life,
I did.
even though the challenges physically could have been insurmountable to a lot of people. You just went, oh, okay, there's another way. Let me
Well,
find that.
and I don't know what the way is, but I'm going to find it. And Barbara, what's been so weird in my life, and yet I don't know, is I have this plan. I'm doing this. I'm going down this road. Oh, actually, this is better. I couldn't have imagined it. I was going down this road, and now this is suddenly better. It has, like, I never imagined going to Conestoga College. I thought I would be teaching at university at Wilfrid Laurier, where there's an archaeology department. That's what I thought was going to happen.
Yeah,
And it was so strange, though. I defended my PhD.
yeah.
And the next day I was sitting in front of my computer, and I literally said out loud, now what? And the phone rang, and I'm not kidding. And it was Conestoga College calling. And they said, the fellow on the phone said, I hear you're good. Do you want a job? I was like, what? And I said, okay, yeah, because I didn't even know they taught history. I didn't know and what was interesting was he had talked to the secretary in our department, and she had recommended me. And it's funny how, like, why would I imagine that would have happened? And it's just, anyway. But
I
and
love
then I took one course, and I thought, yeah, I'm teaching that. I could do one. And then he offered me another one, and I was like, hmm. And then he came to me one day and said, well, I'd like to off, he had to post the job. It wasn't a cakewalk, but he said, I'd like to hire. Do you think you're interested in full time? I'm going to post this job. Do you want to try it? I remember thinking to myself, well, I could always quit if I don't like it, or if my body can't do it, but I think I need to try. I think I need to try. And so it's like, okay. And so I've been full time ever since. I got the job, obviously. And by the way, it wasn't a gift. I mean, I did have to go for the interview and the whole process like everybody else. But I love my job. I love my job. And I'm just so lucky to do it every day. So anyway.
I think that's the thing. When you love what you do, that shines through louder than anything else. And the people around you see it, right? Your students benefit from it. The school benefits from it. We need more teachers who love what they do, professors who love what they do, rather than, well, this is what I, was trained for, and now I'm going to just, be a professor. I'll just teach. I don't know what else to do. Like, I think there's something about doing what you absolutely love that I think sends a very loud message to the people around you and the people even who are listening to this conversation right now, that it doesn't matter what life deals you, it's how you deal with the life that you've been dealt. And you basically, you take a look at what is and go, okay, now what? Where's that open door? I know it's here somewhere.
It's so, 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 so true. Like, I never would have applied to Conestoga, and it's a better fit for me. I mean, it's a better fit for me for lots of reasons, but one of the cool ones is I get to develop so many things that I've developed the only archaeology course we've ever had. I've developed the only gender course we have. I've developed history courses. I teach 2 history of art courses using my art background. It's like everything I've had, I can bring together into this job. I've also am developing the first disability minor at the college, and I'm right now teaching the very first course in my disability minor called Why Normal Sucks. And normal does
I
suck. It's
want to
terrible.
borrow that title.
Well, feel free. But I'm just feeling like I'm right now in this place that culminated in so many of my interests and my
Yep.
expertise. I'm suddenly in this place. And so, like I said, you take this road, you think you're going down, you think you're going this way, and oh, well, okay, I'm over here. Yeah, you know what? That's even better. And yeah, I just can't explain it. I mean, I don't have to explain it. It just is. I love it.
And that's the message that I'm getting, is it just is. It's just like when I was in Kenya and had pneumonia, and I couldn't do the conference I went there for. I couldn't go and hang out with all the people that I was there with. Um, However, I never once felt, oh, poor me or whatever. I had a great time. I rested, I slept, I talked to the people at the front desk, my drivers, the person who cleaned my room. I had all these people caring for me, so I had a great time.
So I'm so glad you're going all that way to get cared for that way. That's wild. That's
Oh,
really
I'll
wonderful.
tell you, it's beautiful. If I was in a hotel here, I probably would have gotten forgotten.
Potentially, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
over there, it's like they were just bending over backwards for me. It was so beautiful, and we just laughed and chatted and talked about their families, and yeah, it was lovely.
You certainly could have moaned about what you were missing rather than just
Right.
experience what you were doing. I do want to stress that for me, and I know this only works for me, that for years, whenever I have a new MS symptom or even an old one I haven't had for a long time that rears its ugly head, I wallow in self pity. I let myself feel this is not fair. It's not right for 24 hours.
Yeah,
And at the end of 24 hours, I'm like, okay, Laura Quirk, that's enough. Now we're moving on. You've been there, done that. And what I find, Barbara, is I have to let myself
you
wallow
have
in
to
that
feel.
self pity. I have to.
Yeah,
Or I find that it permeates things. I'm trying hard not to feel that way, and I do. But if I just let myself feel it, and then I'm like, okay, that's it. I'm done with that. That works really, really well for me. And
yeah.
I know it's not going to work for everyone. And so I guess you didn't feel the need to wallow in that self-pity, and that's so
I
great.
think, yeah, I think I had my moments of going, wow, this this is not what I planned. But I think the relief came when I found out it wasn't as severe as I had originally thought, because I
Yeah.
thought maybe it was my heart,
Oh,
right?
oh, yeah.
And so finding out it wasn't that was like, okay, I feel fine.
Anything's better than that. Yeah, yeah. This is
Yeah,
all on the upside of that. Yeah. It's
it's
just
just
pneumonia.
pneumonia, take an antibiotic, I'll be fine. Yeah.
As long as that's
But
true. Yeah.
I love what you said about that, because I think it's so important to experience exactly where we are. So when I have a moment of feeling frustrated or annoyed, be in that, feel that.
Yes.
And yeah, and give it a timeline. This needs an hour, this needs a day, but you know what? I'm not living here. I'm not taking up residence. So I
Exactly.
love that. Again, it's what is, and honoring that. So good for you. We're going to take a short little commercial break, and then we're going to be right back. You're watching The Joy Show here on the New Thought Media Network. My guest, Dr. Laura Quirk, and we're going to be back in just a few minutes. Don't go away.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hepperlin Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Spiritual Center, Kitchener, Om Center for Spiritual Living, La Mesa, Satya Center, Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for making New Thought Media Network a place to be. Please come be you. And remember, like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
Watch me change when you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
And it was a treat. It was a bonding. It was a celebration of men. It was a celebration of men who want to deepen in their spiritual awareness of one another, of themselves.
Welcome. We are a brotherhood of spiritually minded and open-hearted positive men. We invite you to join us.
And I came in knowing one person, I left knowing all of the group. And I feel like I came in knowing meeting strangers, but knowing and leaving brothers.
Come experience the New Thought Men's Gathering, Foundations 2024. Friday, March 15th through Sunday, March 17th. With Reverend Robert Brzezinski, Reverend Patrick Creelman, Reverend Eamon Duffy, and special guest musician Jamie Lula. In Vernonia, Oregon, at Camp Cedar Ridge. Learn more and register at www.newthoughtmens.community.
Well, welcome back to the Joy Show. I'm here with Dr. Laura Quirk, and we are talking about life with all its ups and downs and just living it as it is.
We sure are. Yeah, I was thinking about the name of your show, and it's interesting. Of course, I shared with you earlier, my dog's name is Joy, but that's not actually what is interesting to me. Last little while, the college, for some reason, a couple of people have asked me to do workshops on joy. And I did that in the last little while. And it's been really interesting because I found myself thinking about what is joy. And I've thought joy is a choice. And so
Yes.
I kept saying to the faculty, we can sit here and moan and groan about things that are bothering us, things that are unhappy to us, things that are upsetting to us, or we can choose joy. And I was like, but so let's talk about what that means, and it was an interesting journey to sort of say, do you think the opposite of joy is grief? Do you think the opposite of joy is pain and sorrow? And I mean, let me say this about that. I think of joy as that woohoo moment. And I think of happiness as that deep place of contentment.
Mhm.
And I will tell you that I've always been a joyful person, but I have not always been a happy person. And it was when I left home that I really started to be happy and authentic, like we were talking about before the break. And so, but this thing about joy is I can choose to feel punky and sad and dumpy, and I can also choose not to be. And so I started thinking about that. And one of the things we talked about in the workshop that I recently gave is I said, so here's how I used to handle that. When I first had MS and I was in pain, I was in a lot of pain, and we couldn't really get the pain under control. And they kept giving me narcotics, and I didn't want to go up the analgesic ladder, is what it's called, because I don't like being stoned. I didn't like that feeling.
Yeah.
And I was in pain and being stoned. So, I might as well just not be stoned to get rid of one of those feelings. But I struggled. And so I kept saying to myself, right, I am not going to bed without adding something that gives me joy. And so lots of times I couldn't think, honestly, when I was going to bed, what was going to make me feel better, because I was in pain and I felt awful and I was weak. And so I started writing down on a list, and I kept it beside my bed, of things that gave me joy that I could do before I went to bed, went to sleep. So I was in bed and I was like, okay. So it's things like pet my dog, something as simple as that, or make myself a cup of tea, or listen to a certain song, or read certain poetry, or look at a painting that I have in my house, or look at art online nowadays. But back then it wasn't really about computers so much as it was just, and also I had trouble seeing. So sometimes it was more tactile things. What could I smell that made me feel good? What could I touch that would make me feel good? What could I listen to? And anyway, I had this list. Now, yes, I had to see them, the list beside my bed. But anyway, I advise that to anyone who is thinking, I don't know. How do you choose joy, Laura? Well, I think you can make it in little tiny steps and start by just what makes you feel joyful, makes you feel good, what makes you feel pleasure. And I realized when I lost my vision that I'm a very sensual person, that I realized that I'm living much more in understanding what things feel like and what they smell like. And I'm still to this day conscious of that. Now, yes, I love my art. I love looking at things. I love to read.
Yeah.
So it's my other senses have been heightened. And so anyway, for me, joy was part of that. So I was thinking of that during the break, thinking your show is called Joy, and my choice in how I choose, big and small. I mean, those are little reasons, big ways I choose joy, but there's much bigger ones. I mean, obviously the people I love, spending time with them and going for a walk and whatever, but it can be little things too.
Little things.
Make it.
Yeah, I had an understanding about, it must have been in October or something, where I thought, I don't do anything just for fun. Everything I do is work related, and I love my work. So it's easy to just work. And I thought, that's not balanced. That's not sustainable. It's not fulfilling in the long run. And I thought, well, what brings me joy? And the first thing that came to mind was playing piano, which I have not done since I was a teenager.
Wow.
And I quit because I was a teenager. And
Yes.
all of my adult life, I've regretted it. And I thought, I need to play piano. So I started taking piano lessons.
Good for you.
And so, I spend time every day just, running scales, doing whatever, and doing these piano lessons. And then the other thing I talked to my husband about, I said, as I love to dance, like we need to plan places where we can go, or even dance in our living room for that matter. But dancing needs to be added. So it was interesting, as you were talking about that, in order that we have balance, we have to have it in all the areas of our lives. Like we have to sit back and go, what brings me joy, and what helps me to feel fulfilled and satisfied, and what allows me to go to bed at night feeling grateful, and do I appreciate me and my gifts? I recently started taking a course where I had to do some heavy duty forgiveness work. I had to write out 35 statements every morning. I forgive myself for judging myself as, and 35 again at night. So
Wow, that is heavy. Yeah,
it's really heavy. And if you miss a day, then you have to start the 7 days all over again. So I was really careful not to miss a day.
Yes.
And then at night, after you write the 35, you write 9 appreciation statements.
Not 35?
No, just 9. I'm
Why
not
9,
sure.
I wonder? That's an interesting number.
It was an interesting number too. But the forgiveness was 70 times 7, which of course we hear in the Bible. You
Oh,
must forgive 70 times 7. So it
I was
was,
wondering where that number came from. Got it.
yeah, so it was the 7 days, 70 times a day for 7 days. And so I still catch myself where I'll go, oh, I think I need to forgive this. And I'll remind myself, and it's all about judgment about me, right? I forgive myself for judging myself as, rather than, I forgive this or that. It's all about, because it all comes back to our own self, how we feel about life is how we're going to sort of respond to different things. So yeah, it's amazing. But finding that thing that we're joyful about, the thing that actually gives us satisfaction in life and fulfillment, that's what you're doing. And that's so beautiful.
Well, it is to me, but it's what I'm doing for me. I mean,
Yeah.
I would wish that other people would find ways to do whatever they need to do for them, that whatever that
Oh,
means. When you were talking about forgiveness, it's interesting. Early on with MS, I remember thinking to myself a couple of things. First of all, that I never, ever wanted to leave anyone I love wondering whether I loved them. And so I made a point to tell people, and though one of my love language is not saying how I feel about people, I am telling people so much more because I think they need to know, and I don't ever want anyone to wonder. And
yeah.
that leads me to, when you're talking about forgiveness, I was thinking to myself, it's closely in my mind kin to regret. And I really made sure early on that I don't regret anything. Just like I didn't want to leave people wondering if I love them. I also didn't ever want to be in the place that I regret what I'm doing. And
Yeah.
so I tend to find, rather than, I don't, it took me a long time to think about forgiveness. And when I thought about forgiveness, I realized my definition of forgiveness is if I can put myself in someone else's shoes, I can't hold it. I just can't hold it. If I can't do that, if I can't be empathetic, then it's on me.
Yeah.
But so for me, forgiveness wasn't so much the issue as I just thought nothing is worth regret. Nothing is worth thinking to myself, I wish.
You're so smart.
Well, and I don't know about smart. It was just so I don't know if I think about forgiveness for myself. Like if you said to me, what are things you forgive about yourself? I'd be hard pressed because I don't spend time
That's
holding
awesome.
it. Like
Yeah.
and I'm not saying, woohoo, I'm great that I don't. I just, it was a choice
Yeah.
about how I wanted to live. And the other thing that was interesting for me, I was in the hospital, unable to speak, and the brainstem was swelling. It wasn't going down, and the neurologist kind of explained it's like a balloon in a small space, and it's blowing
Mhm.
up, and it only can go so far because it goes kaboom. This was the really dangerous symptom, and they just couldn't get it down. And
Yeah.
I was 16% intelligible. And so you really had to listen carefully to maybe get some of what I was saying. And yes, I could handwrite, but although I'm right-handed, my left hand is the one that's curled up many times, but my right hand still is quite awkward. And I can't read my own handwriting, which always makes me laugh. I'm a doctor. That's my excuse now. I can't write anything. But both hands have been affected. And so I sat there thinking to myself, I have all these things in my head I want to talk about, and this head full of things, and I can't get it out.
Yeah.
I found myself thinking, my silences have not protected me. I haven't been able to, like, by not saying and I want to say should have said, but just not saying things like, this hurt my feelings. This was hard. This was difficult. My silences had not protected me. And I promised myself from that point on, I was always going to speak my truth, never do it in a way that was hurtful to someone else. And sometimes it does hurt because I've had friends say to me, "Oh, Laura, yeah, yeah, your honesty is a little bit too much here, back off. And fair enough. But I never mean to be hurtful ever. But I have to speak my truth. I have to. And if I can't, then I need to back off until I can find a way to do it another way. But I I feel really strongly and about that. And so I
Yeah,
suppose that's another reason that one of my doctors said, you're not as well as you think you are. I'm like, yeah, I am. I'm exactly as well as I think, because that's my truth.
yeah.
And I'm not you. That's your truth. And I'm not. My truth is that I am. So,
And
yeah,
you know more about you than he does.
right. You can have
Yeah.
all the tests you want. It doesn't mean a thing, really. I mean, that's not
No,
true.
it
It
doesn't.
tells you something, but does it tell you about who I am? It doesn't tell you anything about that.
And it doesn't tell you where I'm going either. It
Yeah.
might suggest where somebody else has gone, but that doesn't mean I'm going there. So good for you. You have such a healthy outlook on life. It's really remarkable um, to listen to you talk about, especially knowing the struggles that you've had, which have been really huge by anyone's standards, to be in that place of accepting what is, whether you have to go through a pouty moment to get there. I think
Yeah.
we all do that. And I think that's part of honoring what is, right? Right now, I feel like crap. And so that's what is. It's not good. It's not bad. It simply is what it is. And by accepting that, what happens is it moves quickly. We don't hold it in place, right?
And it's interesting because I have a friend who has said to me many times, "My gosh, Laura, your thinking is very Buddhist." And I was like, "Is it? Oh, like okay, I don't really know anything about Buddhism." And I started reading about it. It's like, actually, yeah, kind of, yeah. Like there was nothing that I read about Buddhism that made me go, "Oh, really? I never thought of that." I found myself going, "Oh, yeah, I do that. I do, yeah." And I kind of think, without knowing it, that I've just always I don't know. I'm not saying who I'm Buddhist. I'm just I think I am. I'm more Buddhist than anything. And I realize
Yeah.
even my definition of joy is more about Eastern thinking than it is Western thinking. And I don't know. Anyhow, it doesn't even matter to me, honestly. I don't need to label that. But all I'm saying is I just realized that a big part of Buddhism is it just is. It just is. And that's just how I see it.
Yes.
It just is. I can prepare. I can do all that I can. Like when I say I'm really lucky, the truth is I've worked really hard to get here. So it's not lucky that I have this job.
No, you
But
worked for it.
but it's lucky. Well, but what is lucky is my boss. I told him right away, the boss that I had at Conestoga, that I had MS. And I said, I need to tell you this, even though I was told not to. And I said, but I promise you that if I have an MS attack, I will find a way. And he believed me. And that was what was lucky, Barbara. I had to be honest. I had to tell him my truth. But at the same time, what was lucky was he believed me. So I'm not saying, like, I don't like the word lucky. I really, really don't. I just, but I need not and here, but I need to say that there have been moments that, because the things were just gone really well unexpectedly, like him calling me to say you want a job. What? Like, where did that come from? And I mean, I just say thank you to the universe. I don't know where it came from. I'll just say thank you. And that is often too, by the way, what I think is, I don't really get this, but thank you. I don't know why this has worked the way it has, but
Thank
thank you.
you.
So,
I think it was Meister Eckhart, who was I don't know, 15th century monk or something, who said, your only prayer was ever a prayer of gratitude, it would be sufficient.
yes,
And
thank
that's how you live, is in that state of gratitude for what you do have, what is possible, for your ability to see a new way through. That gratitude has built the life that you live, and attracts to you all the right people to support this brilliant path of yours. I
I
love it.
couldn't do it without my friends, without my loved ones, my dear friend Marg, that I just don't know what I
Oh, I
could do
love
right
her.
now without my friend. And
Yeah.
and I think that I'm just so so blessed. I am so blessed with the people that I love. My chosen family, I call them. And yeah, I don't know, Barbara, why I'm the way I am. I'm not going to go, wow, am I good? I've worked so, we all work hard. I don't know why I'm the way I am. I'm just grateful for it. I don't know why I've always had this determination, why I've just known what I needed to do for me to be like, I knew I had to put up with living at home, get a high school degree. So I knew I would not get a job, even at Tim Hortons, McDonald's, whatever, if I didn't at least have high school. So I started there, and I knew that actually what was funny about that was, so I did my undergraduate, and I actually won, not that I want to say woohoo again, but I won the gold medal for top grades in arts and science at Wilfrid Laurier the year I graduated. And I got this gold medal. But what happened was, they said, come on to convocation. And I'm like, no, thank you. And they're like, no, we're going to give you this medal. You must come. I was like, no, thanks. Give it to someone else if that's the case. And even the president of the college, the university, called me and said, look, we want to give you this. Please come. And I'm like, no. And I said, let me tell you why no for me. I said, this is a journey I'm on. And I think if I go to convocation, it'll feel like I've stopped the journey. For me, I need to keep the momentum going. The only convocation I'm going to is when I get my doctorate. And that's what I did. It's the only convocation I went to is when I got my doctorate. And they couldn't believe that I didn't want to go and get, woohoo, Laura, you got this great award. It was thank you and no. So if that's what you need, give it to someone else. I just didn't need to have that, because for me, what I needed. So all I'm trying to say, Barbara, is for some reason I've always known what I need. And when I don't know, I don't know. I just, okay, I'll admit, not always. When I was sick, at my sickest, when I couldn't walk, when I had make me cry. I couldn't walk, and I was on a disability pension, and they're like, okay, it's time for you to get a scooter. And I was like, oh, I can't be in a wheelchair, whatever. But although the government paid a big hunk of it, we still had to pay a few $1,000s to get this thing. And I thought, I can't afford that. And 11 of my friends came together and paid for it. Each of them paid for it. So all of a sudden, what would have been this thing that I couldn't possibly get into became not only a tool of love, but a tool of independence. And so suddenly this thing that I thought would have been horrid and no way was like, oh, hi, okay, me and my scooter, off we go. And it just changed it for me. And so all I'm like, there were times when I didn't know what I was going to do. What if they don't take me at university? What am I going to do next? And how am I going to handle? But the thing is to say, okay, I'm doing what I can do, whatever that means. That's all I can ever do. Do whatever I can do, whatever that means.
Can do.
Yeah. But so that's, I guess, maybe a better way to say that, I feel lucky that I'm equipped for whatever reason for lots of things, but also just, I guess I'm adaptable. With an MS body, by the way, one has to be very adaptable. I used to wish, when I first found out I had MS, and I hope that anyone listening to this doesn't hear this in the way it's going to sound. I wished I had cancer, because at least I would have known what I had, and I could have handled that part of my body that needed surgery or whatever it needed. But because MS can literally affect anything from the top of the head to the bottom of my feet, and it has, I needed to learn to be adaptable. And I was that A personality that if I had 10 things on my list and I didn't get 11 done, it was not a good day.
Yep.
I had to learn, woohoo, I got one done. Yay! On my list of 10. and you just have to learn to be adaptable. And so anyway, long story short,
I love that. I love that, being adaptable. And the thing is, the nice thing about a to-do list is it'll wait for you.
Sometimes, yes. And if it doesn't need to be done.
Exactly. When I first got into ministry, I was always trying to empty my inbox.
Oh.
And one day I sat back and I went, it's never going to be empty. It's always going to be full. And that's a good thing because that means there's something for me to do. So,
And you're reminding me of when people used to say to me, Laura, is your cup half full or is it half empty? And I'd be like, I don't get the question because it's refillable. I just don't get the question. So I would just be like, I don't really get the question. And so I suppose that's always been my attitude about things too, to be honest.
oh, I love it. I love it. Well, we're coming up to the end of our hour. This has been fantastic. I love it so much. What is the one thing that you would like people to take away from this conversation? If there was one thing that I know that we have someone who might be diagnosed with MS here shortly, 35-year-old, and we're holding him in prayer. What's one thing you could say to somebody who's getting a diagnosis like this, what they can do or what might work for them that's worked for you?
So I had a philosophy when I first got MS, found out I had MS, and I decided if I could afford it emotionally and financially, try anything. And
Mhm.
so, certainly, when you're early on, there are lots of opportunities for things. They're doing a lot more medications these days, drug trials. My best advice, honestly, is listen to your gut. And if you think in your gut, I don't mean your head, I mean in your gut,
Yeah.
that this is the right thing for you or the wrong thing for you, listen to that. And so I suppose if you're looking at diagnosis, it is a scary, hard place to be, but it's not the end of the world. It doesn't have to be the end of anyone's world. There are, like I said, lots of things to it. But again, trust your gut. Go with what your gut tells you about what's right and not right for that. That's my best advice for someone getting diagnosed.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Well, I know for me, probably the greatest thing I got from this conversation, just so delightful. You just made my day. Talk about joy. I feel joyful listening to
Thank
you.
you. That's nice. Thank you.
What I really love and the thing that I talk about so often is it is what it is. And we can't change what is. However, how we deal with what is creates our next experience. So I think of all the things you said, you have lived in this place of here's my choices. And when I have a bad day, I give it a limit. You get to feel like crap for this long, and then, okay, now what? Get on with life. So you are an inspiration,
Mhm.
Dr. Laura. You are truly a gift, and
Thank
people
you.
need to hear your story over and over. And you're writing a book?
Yeah. Well, I did do a little thing about my story and the Hope Project, another whole conversation. So, but I have often thought about it. I should write my story, and yet
Yeah.
it's not over yet. So I'm not really sure when it's time to write it. So
You'll know when the time is right
thank you
because
for
it
that
really
too.
is inspiring.
Oh,
And
thank
so
you.
I am
Very kind.
so grateful. So
Oh,
grateful
thank
you
you.
said yes today.
Oh, thank you for asking.
And I just hope anybody who's listening receives some kind of positive hope and well being as a result of listening to what you had to say. And I think for all of us, when health challenges come, especially health, because we can buy our way out of all sorts of things, but health is the one where the buck stops here. And
Exactly.
you have made the most of a very difficult thing, and you look marvelous in the
Yeah,
process.
thank you. I
So
feel great. And please, I hope that people think of hope as or joy as a choice. It really is. Think of that. Joy is a choice. And
joy is a choice.
joy is a choice.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Know that you are loved. We'll be back here again next week when my guest is Paul Ottman, and we're going to have another fun conversation. In the meantime, Dr. Laura, have a beautiful weekend. And oh, I just love you so much, and I love this conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Take care. We'll talk
Bye.
soon. Bye, everybody.